Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. ISKCON Bibidi Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki. Granthulad Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 4, Text 27. Sokaharsha Bhayadvesa. Sokaharsha Bhayadvesa. Lobha Moha Madanvita. Lobha Moha Madanvita. Mito Gyanantam Mito Nantam Napashyanti. Mito Gnantam Napashyanti. Bhavar Bhavam Pratak Drisha. Bhavar Bhavam Pratak Drisha. Sokaharsha Bhayadvesa. Lobha Moha Madanvita. Mitognantam Napashyanti. Bhavar Bhavam Pratak Drisha. Others, please. Lobha Moha Madanvita. Anybody else? Other than that? Vaishnavis? Anybody? No. Okay. Soka, lamentation. Harsha, jubilation. Bhaya, fear. Dvesa, envy. Lobha, greed. Moha, illusion. Mada, madness. Anvita, endowed with, endowed with. Mita, one another. Gnantam, engaged in killing. Napashyanti, do not see. Bhavai, because of such differentiation. Bhavam, the situation in relation to the Supreme Lord. Pritak Drisha, persons who see everything as separate from the control of the Lord. So this is Vasudev speaking now. Okay, Krishna's father. Translation. Persons with the vision of differentiation are imbued with the material qualities, lamentation, jubilation, fear, envy, greed, illusion, and madness. They are influenced by the immediate cause, which they are busy counteracting. Because they have no knowledge of the remote supreme cause, the personality of Godhead. Purport. Krishna is the cause of all causes, sarva karana karanam. But one who has no connection with Krishna is disturbed by immediate causes and cannot restrain his vision of separation or differences. When an expert physician treats a patient, he tries to find the original cause of the disease and is not diverted by the symptoms of that original cause. Similarly, a devotee is never disturbed by reverses in life. Tatenu kampam susamikshamana. It's from the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th Canto, chapter 14, text 8. A devotee understands that when he is in distress, this is due to his own past misdeeds, which are now accruing reactions. Although by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, these are only very slight. Karmani nidrahati kintu cha bhakti bhajam. Brahma Samhita, chapter 5, text 54. When a devotee, under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is to suffer because of faults and his past deeds, he passes through only a little misery by the grace of the Lord. Although the disease of a devotee is due to mistakes committed in some time in the past, he agrees to suffer and tolerate such miseries. And he depends fully on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus he is never affected by material conditions of lamentation, jubilation, fear, and so on. A devotee never sees anything to be unconnected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Madhvacharya, quoting from the Bhavishya Purana, says, Bhagavad darshanat yasya viroda darshanam pratak pritag dristi savigne ho yo natu sad beta darshana. Om Meganattamananda Shajananjana Shalakaya Chakshura Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. So this is Vasudev speaking, and he's talking about, or at least the purport is talking about a devotee when he's suffering, how he understands it, and it's very important. The main point that I get when I read this is that a devotee understands when he's suffering that, for one thing, he understands it's not due to the superficial causes, like as Prabhupada said, the symptoms of a disease is different from the actual cause of a disease. Basically, what it is, a devotee understands that I'm suffering. Yes, it's due to my past, misdeeds or past mistakes, but really what's going on is Krishna is trying to help me. Krishna is trying to teach me something. You see? That's the real thing. Because Krishna, as is mentioned here in the purport, Prabhupada said, Karmani nidrahati kinchu cha bhakti bhajam. That's from the Brahma Samhita, and it's referring to how, for a devotee, Krishna can minimize the reaction to the sinful activity. You see? He can minimize it to nothing if he wanted to. See? So, I mean, in one sense, devotees really don't even have to suffer. I mean, Krishna is in control, and he could arrange it so that the devotees don't have to suffer at all if he wanted to. I mean, it's within his power, right? As the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, he knows everything. He's in control of everything. And he's the greatest friend and well-wisher of every living entity. And he's particularly inclined to the devotees. There's that verse in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Samaham sarvabhuteshu name dvaistostina priya ye bhajanti tamam bhaksha mai te teshu chapiham, that I envy no one, I'm not partial to anyone, I'm equal to everybody, but want to render service to me in devotion. I'm a friend, I'm in him, and he is a friend to me. So Krishna's partially, especially inclined to the devotees. So, if he wanted to, he could minimize those reactions to the past misdeeds to nothing, so the devotee wouldn't have to suffer at all. But he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. And he doesn't do that for a reason, because if that devotee is not a pure devotee, for instance, it might be a good idea to let him have a little suffering, because he's trying to instruct him. Krishna is trying to teach. You see, and it's different from the kind of teaching that a non-devotee would get. Just like Prabhupada would use this example. Just say you have a situation here in America. Okay, well, imagine it was a kingdom. So the subjects in a kingdom, if they commit some crime, they go to prison. They get caught and they're thrown in jail. And they suffer the punishment. And it's hoped that they will also learn something. It's not like it's totally sadistic. It's also hoped that, hopefully they'll learn something. They'll learn a lesson. And when they get out, they won't rob that bank again, or they won't do whatever they did, to get themselves in that situation. So that's part of the motivation behind that system. But if a member of the royal family commits a crime, then when they're caught, when they're apprehended and tried, so to speak, they get preferential treatment. You see, they'll also be punished, most likely. It's unlikely that they'll just be let scot-free. They'll also be punished, but it'll be designed personally. That punishment will be personally engineered, designed and engineered by the other members of the royal family to really teach that person a lesson. They get because they're part of the family, so they get preferential treatment. They'll still be punished. So it's kind of like that between that's the relationship between devotees suffering and ordinary people suffering. Now, just so that you can feel nice and comfortable that Bhrgupati didn't just make that up, it's not his speculation. I've got it's empty, by the way. I got the reference for it from the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Prabhupada basically makes his point. This is from chapter 5, text 19. So, and the Prabhupada says, I'm going to read a few sentences leading up to the actual point. A devotee of the Lord automatically becomes uninterested in the enchantment of material existence because he is rasa graha, or one who has tasted the sweetness of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. There are certainly many instances where devotees of the Lord have fallen down due to uncongenial association, just like fruit of workers who are always prone to degradation. But even though he falls down, a devotee is never considered the same as a fallen karmi. Here it comes, okay? A karmi suffers the results of his own fruit of actions, whereas a devotee is reformed by chastisement directed by the Lord himself. I'll read that again. A karmi suffers the results of his own fruit of reactions, and this is the main phrase here, whereas a devotee is reformed by chastisement directed by the Lord himself. See? So in other words, Krishna personally gets involved. See? When the devotees are involved, Krishna is involved. Okay? So, which is really wonderful to think about. And this is why, this is the main reason, at least my understanding, why devotees are not disturbed. The more elevated a devotee is, to the degree somebody's a devotee and has this understanding that Krishna is the cause of all causes. Krishna is, Suridam Sarvabhutanam. He's the best friend of every living entity, and he's particularly inclined to his devotees. The more somebody's absorbed, genuinely absorbed in that understanding of life, that realization, to that degree, they're not going to be disturbed by these, things such as, how are they referred to here? A lamentation, jubilation, fear, envy. it's just going to be superficial. It's just going to be, when they're in times of difficulty, times of trials and tribulation, they're going to be meditating, okay, I know what's going on here. Krishna is trying to help me. I have some attachment. I have some impurity in my consciousness. Krishna is he's making an arrangement here to help me get purified, to help me become free from my material attachments, my material contamination. It's his mercy. I'm going to come out on the other end of this a much better person, a much better devotee, more purified, it's going to help me develop my love for him, etc. So let me just tolerate this. I know what's going on. It's uncomfortable. I'm not, if I had my druthers, I'd rather not have to be going through this, but I know what's going on. It's Krishna's mercy. I'll just take it, in stride and continue on, and I know it's for my benefit. It's for my ultimate benefit. That's an important point right there too. That Krishna is always acting for the ultimate benefit of every living entity. And sometimes that can be, because people don't understand that they get bewildered. But that's Krishna's always, just in one lecture Prabhupada said, Krishna never acts outside the principle of love. He didn't say those exact words, but that was the idea. So he's always acting for the ultimate benefit of every living entity. Devotees can understand that. And that's why when, times of trials and tribulations arise, tatenu kampam susamikshamana, a devotee, when he's in distress, he just thinks, okay, this is doing to my past misdeeds, and now, which are now accruing, and Krishna's allowing that to happen because he's wanting me to learn something here. Okay? So he's okay. He's okay with that, and he just tolerates it, and he knows that, as I said, in the long run, it's going to be for his ultimate benefit. So that's a really important. I'll just read a little bit more here. Prabhupada goes on to say, the sufferings of an orphan and the sufferings of a beloved child of a king are not one and the same. An orphan is really poor because he has no one to take care of him. But a beloved son of a rich man, although he appears to be on the same level as the orphan, is always under the vigilance of his capable father. So that's us. That's the case of the devotees. It might appear that, devotees are people, ordinary people are suffering, and the devotees are suffering. What's the difference, Well, there is a difference. We're undergoing suffering. That's, as I said, personally, not just my idea. Devotees reformed by chastisement directed by the Lord himself. So we're undergoing suffering that has been personally designed by Krishna, to really help us advance in devotional service. Whereas an ordinary person, he's undergoing suffering, which is certainly ordained by Krishna, and it's hoped that as a result of undergoing that suffering, he will learn something and become a better person as well. But it's like this relationship between the orphan and the beloved child of a rich man. The devotee is getting preferential treatment from Krishna. Reading on a little bit more here. The fruit of workers want to lord it over the material world. Similarly, a neophyte devotee foolishly thinks of accumulating some material power in exchange of devotional service. Such foolish devotees are sometimes put into difficulty by the Lord himself. As a special favor, he may remove all material paraphernalia. By such action, the bewildered devotee is forsaken by all friends and relatives, and so he comes to his senses, and again by the mercy of the Lord, and is set right to execute his devotional service. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is also said that such fallen devotees are given a chance to take birth in a family of highly qualified brahmanas or in a rich mercantile family. A devotee in such a position is not as fortunate as one who is chastised by the Lord and put into a position seemingly of helplessness. The devotee who becomes helpless by the will of the Lord is more fortunate than those who are born in good families. The fallen devotees born in a good family may forget the lotus feet of the Lord because they are less fortunate. But the devotee who is put in a forlorn condition is more fortunate because he swiftly returns to the lotus feet of the Lord, thinking himself helpless all around. So that's interesting too. So we have to be prepared and try to understand what's going on. In other words, if Krishna's, just like there's that verse, Yasyahamana Nugrami Hadashe Tajanam Shanai, that when Krishna says, when I particularly favor somebody, the first installment of my mercy is I pull the carpet out from under them. I take away all their material, their material prosperity and affluence, and if that's what's required to get them to, take full shelter of me. In other words, if Krishna can see that a devotee is sincere but simultaneously attached, materially attached in some way, then Krishna smashes that. He'll smash that material attachment so that devotee will just fully take shelter of him. And Prabhupada says in one purport in the Bhagavatam, if he tries again, after getting smashed, he tries to recoup and get it back together, and Krishna will smash him again. So devotees have this kind of knowledge, and that's why it is, getting back to today's verse, that they're able to be, I think in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 12th chapter, there's that verse where it talks, it's talking about the good qualities of devotee, and it says the devotee is always calm and patient, and in very difficult circumstance life, and this is why, because he can always see Krishna's hand in it. He's always appreciating that no, Krishna's behind all this, and it's whatever's happening to me, it's for my benefit. He's trying to help me get purified. He's trying to help me make advancement in devotional service. Narada Muni thought like that. Actually, Narada Muni, if you remember the story, was was living with his mother. She was like a servant, a maid servant, and she was his only support. I mean, he was just him and his mother. And then one day she went out and she was milking a cow or something, and she got bit by a snake, if I remember correctly, and she died. Right? And that was it. He had nobody to take care of him. He was 4 years old, and he was just there, no mother anymore, and she was just a maid servant anyway. It wasn't like, it was any big deal to take care, an important kid or anything like that. He wasn't like the son of a king or something. And then he just, what to do? And as Prabhupada says in the purport, Vyasadeva says, he took it as a benedictory direction from the Lord, who's always desiring the welfare of his devotees. So he just took it, this is Krishna's arrangement, to make me, help me become fully dependent upon him, to take full shelter of him, which is exactly what he did, you see. So, because the devotee's thinking like that, he's seeing at every step a benedictory direction from the Lord. Therefore, when these reverses in life appear, he's not bewildered. He's not bewildered like an ordinary person who is kind of like, why is this happening to me? Actually, that's one of the people become atheists because of, the inability to understand this. Prabhupada, the classic example that Prabhupada gave was World War II, that the German women were praying, well, probably the British women too, in Europe, the women were praying, please let my husband return, or please let my son return from the battle, from the war. And then when they didn't return, they thought, what is this? This is so unfair. And this God is useless. I don't believe he even exists. Actually, my mother had that kind of an experience. She was, as a very young girl, her father was an Orthodox Jew, and he was praying all the time. He did everything. He was just like Hare Krishnas do. We're not the only ones that get up early in the morning and pray and do a whole lot of stuff. People in other religions do, at least the Jewish religion people do. And so he was in that category, and but he died very young. I can't even remember the exact age. I think right around 50, 48 or something like that. She was 11 years old. And her thinking went like this. She told me, more than once, she used to repeat it. She said, who could have been a better, devotee of God? She didn't use those words, but who could have been a better godly person than my father? He did everything. He got up early, put on, the Jews, as I said, they have a whole ritual that they do. He did the whole thing. And he was praying, and he did, even on the fasting days, he wouldn't even take his medicine because, you're not supposed to put anything in your mouth. And she said, look what happened to him. So what is the use of this God? And she couldn't, he did, what's the use? So people think like that because, they don't have the depth of philosophical knowledge. They don't have the understanding that whatever Krishna is doing, it's for the ultimate benefit. I mean, just I after many, many years of hearing my mother say this, I one time said, well, Mom, maybe he's in a much better place than here, And she went, I never thought of that, that it could be better in some way. But anyway, so devotees we're in a fortunate position we have this understanding, and it's what enables us to, sustain, endure, tolerate, etc. These so many reverses in life. I mean, of course, as is just about with everything, Prabhupada, the greatest example would be Srila Prabhupada, who went through hell. To say hell would be to minimize it, to start this Krishna consciousness movement. It's the older you get, the more you marvel, the more appreciation, genuine appreciation you can have for what Prabhupada did. I'm recently turned 65, and I think to myself, wait a second, 65. Prabhupada was 70 when he just first started the movement. And I just sit there and I scratch my head and I go, what? How the heck did... Because it's like, how do you start it's incredible. It's incredible. And that was after, 2 heart attacks and a stroke. It's one thing to do something, to venture out to do something when you're young and you're healthy and you're full of energy, you're full of beans, as the expression goes, and that's one thing. But at the fag end of your life, as Prabhupada described it, to embark upon such an ambitious venture as starting a worldwide spiritual movement, which his godbrothers already failed at the same attempt in Europe and in Germany, and in England and in Germany. It's like incredible. So anyway, so getting to the point, Prabhupada had this realization. Prabhupada had this, very deep conviction that, Krishna's for real, and he's going to help me. And all these trials and tribulations, these reverses that are happening, the heart attacks and the strokes and the this and the that, this is all just, to strengthen my determination and, give me further, deeper realization about, who Krishna is and what he can do. And that's really how it worked. Prabhupada said, it actually did, if it is possible, going through all those experiences actually did heighten or enhance Prabhupada's Krishna consciousness, as I said, if that's possible, Because there's this one letter where he wrote, in response to a letter that a devotee wrote to him, he said, Sudama, who's no longer with us, passed away, but he said, when I was alone in your New York, I was thinking, who will listen to me in this horrible place? But at least I can distribute a few of my books. That is something. But then he goes, but Krishna was all along planning something I could not see. He brought you young American and European boys and girls to me one by one for spreading the message of Lord Chaitanya. Now I could see it as a miracle. He says, because otherwise you're one old man with barely enough money for buying edibles. How could he survive? What to speak of spreading a God-conscious movement for the saving of the entire human race? He said, it's a miracle. Now I can see it. See? So that was the point, that, all that happened to Prabhupada, and what was his gain? His gain was the realization that Krishna was all along planning something I could not see. You see? Prabhupada got that realization. He had that realization that Krishna's there. Krishna's in control. Krishna's making it happen. Krishna's reciprocating with the sincere efforts of this pure devotee to follow the instruction of his spiritual master, which was to take this knowledge from India and spread it in the Western world. And Prabhupada could understand that, okay, Krishna is all along. I went through hell. I had this problems with my health. I had problems with these people were so fallen and unqualified and whatever the problems were. But Krishna was all along planning something I could not see. And Prabhupada had a very powerful, tangible, concrete realization of that. And that's why Prabhupada was able to proceed like a lion. That's why Prabhupada was able to come, face to face against scientists, philosophers, people with all sorts of academic credentials and qualifications. But he was so courageous because Prabhupada's knowledge was not gyan, it was vigyan, realized knowledge. He had realized knowledge that Krishna is there. Krishna is all along planning something I can't see. He's there. He's backing me, and that was the, why Prabhupada was able to be like that. So, how are we doing for time here? 10 past. Is it 10 past? Am I seeing it correctly? You know what? I had a lot of other stuff, a lot of other points, but we should try to stay to the time schedule. So maybe I'll stop there and ask if there are any questions. I think I made at least one solid point there in that class. Yeah, Mata.
I just wonder if, doctors are supposed to think also like this, that Krishna is punishing a devotee.
Speak louder. I'm a little hard of hearing.
If, for example, a devotee is a doctor.
A doctor?
Is he supposed to think that, okay, this is Krishna's punishment? What can I do? I mean, is that the right mentality?
You could think like that, but that doesn't mean you can't simultaneously deal with it. In other words, say you're in some difficult health situation. Yeah, you should be thinking that due to my past misdeeds, I'm suffering like this. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't do everything you possibly can to cure yourself, to get healthy again.
That sounds like a contradiction. I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. It's like, you have to have a philosophical, you have a philosophical outlook towards life. No, you don't think that, it has nothing to do with, nothing to do with spiritual. I mean, no, it's. I don't think it's a contradiction. I mean, you're thinking that you have a particular understanding of why it's happening to you, in addition to just the organic explanation that, I contracted these germs, or I bumped into this object, or whatever, or I ate this food that had too much of this in it or that in it for too many years, and now I've got... No, you see a philosophical reason behind the suffering. At the same time, you do everything, and there is I can't quote it or cite it at this point, but there's definitely a Vedic injunction that one should do everything in their power to maintain their life and maintain their health. And Prabhupada himself did. Prabhupada didn't just lay down and die. You know what I mean? Prabhupada had all sorts of problems, but he dealt with them in his own way. Prabhupada wasn't a big fan of allopathic medicine, but Prabhupada, he did things to deal with his health issues. So, I think I don't see it as a contradiction. I think it's just a way of relating to the whole overall situation, that you think, okay, due to my past misdeeds, this is happening, and you take it in a humble way, and then simultaneously you do whatever you can to to deal with it, to correct the situation if it is at all possible.
But then another question is that is it always happening that when you realize the cause of your suffering, of your disease, does it stop the disease, the suffering?
Well, I mean, in the case of like a physical disease,
yeah.
No, not necessarily. I mean, it's not Krishna. It's never guaranteed in any place that a devotee is going to become free from all his physical diseases. But, somebody won't, if they have, say, cancer, they don't get rid of their cancer just by being a pure devotee. Somebody could be a pure devotee and get cancer, and it could be terminal. But they won't get cancer again if they're a pure devotee.
So as far as I understood, the point is not to recover, but to realize the mistakes.
Well, it's both. You know, it's totally legitimate, and it's not more than legitimate. It's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to try to stay alive and healthy to serve Krishna, right? So that's totally there. But at the same time, we're supposed to understand that ultimately, due to something I did in the past, I'm suffering like this. So let me continue on with my devotional service and if I can't make an immediate solution to my problems, which is, curing my disease, at least let me make an ultimate solution to my problems, which is that I'm a conditioned soul, and that because I'm a conditioned soul, I have a material body. So let me proceed with my devotional service as purely as I possibly can, and at least when I give up this body, I'm not going to have to take another one. Like Jayapataka Maharaj, let's use him as an example, okay? He had that stroke. He's a very, let's say pure devotee, okay? Doing incredible service since that time, but not getting, he's got somewhat better, but he's far from being, rehabilitated. He's far from being what he is, his old self, so to speak. So what to do? He's dealing with that. He's continuing on with his service. It's not like because of, his service that he's, as I said, regained his, normal status of health. But when he's finished with his body, if he comes back into this material world, it'll be because Lord Chaitanya wanted him to come back again to continue helping this, the Sankirtan movement. It won't be because, he had to take another material body due to some, leftover reactions or something like that. You see, so he's simultaneously making an ultimate solution to he made an ultimate solution to his problem, and he's doing whatever he can to deal with the immediate problem, which is the health issue. So, does that make sense? Thank you. Anybody else have anything? Amal Bhakta Maharaj.
Thank you for a very nice class, Bhrgupati. Made a lot of nice points and giving a lot of excellent explanations. There was just one point. You may have planned to talk about it because you said you had other points, and I would just like to make that one, at least one of points, and that is in the case of, for example, pure devotees who are living in the material world. They are sometimes given tremendous amount of suffering and difficulties and tribulations, problems. They're pure devotees, and the question is, why should they even have this? They have no karmic reactions. That's all been finished for them. So sometimes Krishna will, he uses them as an example for the persons who do have karmic reactions to show how even great persons, noble persons, controlled persons, advanced persons, how they deal with it, and set them up as an example. Whatever great man does come and follow whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So therefore he sets them up as the Pandavas are an excellent example because they endured 13 years in a forest, and then 12 years in the forest, and 1 year in incognito in a particular king, I can't remember his name. They had to act in different in a disguised situation, which was very difficult, and there were problems there too. With Draupadi, there was an attempt to virtually rape her, and Bhima came along and literally tore the man to pieces. So he was showing how heroism has to be used, and how courage has to be used, how determination and resourcefulness must be used in the worst of circumstances, and they handle it very nicely, and Kunti summarized it very beautifully, how wonderful this is. She said that even though we're in the forest, even when we're in a helpless situation, we have no friends, we have nobody, still we depend upon you, and therefore we never forget you. And what can be better than that? Because that is the sure the surefire way to go back home, back to Godhead. So therefore, a devotee should also take it that way, that maybe if he has no material desires, there's no question anymore, why am I getting this? I'm being used as an example.
Yeah.
And other people will see the example, and therefore they will make advancement as a result of my suffering. And Ramachandra, he also went through
thank you.
this.
That's a great contribution. Yeah, Prabhupada used to say the mother teaches the daughter-in-law by teaching the daughter. You know, like when, let's say, the son gets married and he brings back his wife, and the mother has to train her up. So she'll chastise her daughter in the kitchen, you know, and like that around the house. Because if she chastises the new daughter-in-law directly, she'll, you know, could freak out and everything. So she chastises her daughter, and this way, indirectly, she's instructing the new daughter-in-law. Sorry, did I interrupt you? Okay, yeah. Thank you.
On the other point, which I think I thought you answered very nicely of Mataji's question, there's another little sidelight to that, and that is the devotee should also think that, yeah, I'm getting this disease or disorder. It's obviously from some karmic reaction from some terrible thing I've done. But so how do I deal with it? As you nicely said, you just deal with it as best as you can. But we need to think that this body doesn't belong to us. It's not our body. We never made it. It was given to us as a gift by Krishna. And therefore, because it is a gift, and because we are devotee of Krishna, it is our duty to take care of the gifts that Krishna gives us, because they belong to him. So because this body belongs to Krishna, therefore I will do whatever is necessary to make it work as well as possible, notwithstanding the fact that Krishna may be upsetting and disturbing the airs of the body, giving me a headache, giving me an earache, and so he can do whatever he wants. But what I'm supposed to do is to take care of his property as best as I can, so that that property ultimately can work properly or nicely in devotional service. So he does his duty, and Krishna does whatever he needs, and both work together in order to produce a perfect person.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to do more questions? Go ahead. Nikashma Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, just kind of in relation to the same point, the verse you're bringing up about how every living entity has the duty to preserve their life. I was kind of thinking about this a lot over the last few weeks, because we've been discussing the atrocities of King Kamsa. And so in relation to him, you know, he's also in a situation where he's trying to preserve his life. So what's the difference between somebody like Kamsa, who's trying to preserve his life, as opposed to somebody who is preserving their life in like a virtuous kind of way?
The way he went about it. Good question. I would say the way he went about it. I mean, you know, it's not like he had to do exactly what he did. Okay, good. He should try to preserve his life too. He heard that voice from the sky, and he's thinking, uh-oh, I'm in trouble here. So, you know, but he didn't have to embark upon a plan to destroy all the children, and he could have did something like approach some great saintly person and said, hey, I heard this omen from the sky, and it's predicting this, and what should I do? And he, you know, he probably would have got advice to handle the situation in an entirely different way. That would be my immediate response. I mean, he just took it upon himself to, you know, he concocted some way to deal with it, and of course it was totally, you know, demoniac. So, but yeah, he could have handled it differently. And once again, in short, yeah, Radha Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, as always, thank you so much. Prabhu, this verse in the 9th chapter that Krishna says, I am equal to everybody, but the devotee who is engaged in bhajan, devotional service, I dwell in him, he dwells in me, so I dwell in him, right?
Yeah.
So devotees sometimes like take that as Krishna being favorable to the devotees, and then having taken it as such, they go through a difficult, you know, explanation of equality. And favoritism is like, then how do they add up in a single verse? You know, it's a little bit becomes tricky, but the trickiness is removed if we get like closer to what Krishna says. Krishna says that the person, the devotee, dwells in me, so I dwell in him. In other words, when some atrocity, some like karmic reaction comes to the devotee, because the devotee dwells in Krishna, he sees Krishna's hand behind the incident, that karmic reaction becomes the mercy of Krishna to him, because he sees Krishna's hands there and he tries to take the lesson that's there. But if the same devotee doesn't see that hand at that moment, right, he's going to suffer, right, without getting the lesson that he's got to take from it. The same way a karmi, if he happens to see Krishna's hand behind some incident, he's going to receive the mercy, receive the lesson, right? So the key factor is the person, the devotee, being absorbed in Krishna, dwelling in Krishna, and that's how Krishna also dwells in him, right? It's not favoritism. It's a matter of consciousness.
That's it. There you go.
Yeah, the deciding
devotee
factor.
devotee means consciousness, not the body. What determines somebody's a devotee or not is not the body, it's your consciousness. So that's the pivotal point. If a person is in devotional consciousness, even though he might not be officially a devotee, but he's responding to what's happening to him in the way somebody who would be conversant in this philosophy should be, then yeah, he's going to not suffer as much as even somebody who's supposedly a devotee, but is not, applying the philosophy in his life.
Sure.
Okay.
So, in other words, if the deciding factor here in this interaction is not Krishna, is our consciousness.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's a big part of it.
That's what makes karma versus mercy. That's the switch.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Okay, so I think we should stop there. Thank you very much for coming and being such a nice, patient, attentive audience. Guntrad Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. That's classic. You'll experience this yourself when you start getting class.